The drive up to the old family house felt longer than I remembered, each turn in the road, a twist in the knot of anxiety in my stomach. My mother's passing was sudden, leaving a chasm of unresolved feelings and a legacy I wasn't sure I was ready to confront. As I parked in front of the weathered Victorian, its silhouette loomed like a question mark against the twilight sky, a question I wasn't sure I wanted answered. I'm Annie. If you had told me a month ago that I would be standing here, at the threshold of my childhood home, I would have laughed it off. This house, with its creaking floors and whispered secrets, was a world I had left behind, or so I thought. Returning now, in the wake of my mother's death, felt like stepping into a story where the last chapter was left unwritten. This house had seen generations of our family come and go. Its walls were saturated with the joy, sorrow, and occasional madness that my ancestors carried like a family heirloom. My mother never spoke much about our family history, but the house itself was a testament to it, a living museum of our lineage, for better or for worse. Standing there, with my hand on the old iron gate, I couldn't help but feel the weight of those who had passed through it before me. It was as if the house had been patiently waiting, holding its breath for my return. And though the rational part of me dismissed the idea, I couldn't shake the feeling that the house, in its silence, had stories yet to tell, stories that were now mine to uncover. With a deep breath, I pushed the gate open and made my way up the path. The sound of gravel under my feet was the only acknowledgement of my arrival, a solitary audience to this reluctant homecoming. The door, with its peeling paint and ornate knocker, felt like a barrier to a past I wasn't sure I belonged to anymore. This was more than just a return to a childhood home, it was a pilgrimage to a place that held the keys to unanswered questions and unspoken truths. As I reached for the door, ready to step inside, I couldn't help but wonder what ghosts of the past awaited me, ready to whisper their secrets into the heart of someone willing to listen, perhaps for the first time. The air felt heavier as I crossed the threshold, the silence of the house enveloping me like a cloak. This was it, the beginning of a journey into the shadows of my family's legacy. Little did I know, the truths I was about to uncover would challenge everything I thought I knew about my family and myself. The moment I stepped inside, the familiar musty scent of old wood and dust assaulted my senses, a smell that I hadn't realized I remembered until now. It was like stepping into a time capsule, the air thick with the residue of decades gone by. My heart throbbed with a cocktail of emotions, nostalgia, apprehension, and an unexpected surge of sorrow. The hallway was just as I remembered. The wallpaper, a faded floral pattern, peeled at the corners, and the hardwood floor creaked under my weight, a chorus of groans greeting my hesitant steps. I let my fingers trail along the banister as I made my way inside, the smooth wood worn by generations of hands guiding me forward. Memories flooded back in vivid flashes, running down this very hallway, laughter echoing off the walls, hiding in nooks during games of hide and seek, the sound of my mother calling me down for dinner. Each memory was a snapshot, frozen in time, yet alive in the fabric of the house. The living room, to the right, held a heavy silence. The furniture was draped in white sheets, like ghosts of their former selves. Sunlight filtered through the dusty curtains, casting muted beams across the room, illuminating particles of dust dancing in the air. I could almost hear the faint echoes of my family's laughter, a stark contrast to the emptiness that now filled the space. I ventured further, my footsteps echoing in the quiet. The kitchen, once the heart of the home, felt abandoned. The table, where we shared countless meals and stories, stood empty, the chairs pushed in, waiting for a family that no longer gathered there. I ran my hand over the countertop, half expecting to feel the warmth of a freshly baked pie or the sticky residue of spilled juice, remnants of a childhood long past. The stairs creaked under my feet as I ascended, each step a leap back in time. The second-floor hallway was lined with doors leading to bedrooms filled with shadows and whispers of the past. My room, at the end of the hall, awaited me like an old friend. Pushing the door open, I was greeted by the sight of my old bed, my desk cluttered with childhood treasures, and walls adorned with posters and pictures, a frozen tableau of my youth. Standing there, in the doorway of my childhood room, I was overwhelmed by a sense of loss for the time that had passed, for the innocence of youth, and for my mother, whose absence was felt in every dust-covered corner and silent room. The house, a repository of our family's history, stood as a monument to all that was and all that could never be again. As I moved through the house, each room a chapter of my past, I realized that returning here was not just about confronting the memories of my childhood. It was about facing the unresolved questions and shadows that lingered in the recesses of my family's history. With each step, I felt a growing resolve to uncover the secrets that the house held, secrets that my mother took to her grave. The house, with its creaks and sighs, seemed to acknowledge my presence, a silent witness to the journey I was about to embark on. As I stood alone in the midst of my memories, I couldn't help but feel that the house itself was guiding me, urging me to delve deeper into its mysteries. Little did I know, the truths I would uncover would shake the very foundations of everything I believed about my family and myself. Wandering from room to room, I couldn't help but catalog the changes that had occurred in my absence. The layers of dust that blanketed every surface spoke of years of neglect, a stark contrast to the home that once buzzed with life and warmth. Each step forward was accompanied by a mix of nostalgia and unease, as if the house itself was an old friend who had grown distant and unfamiliar over time. In the living room, where laughter once filled the air, the furniture's outlines under their ghostly shrouds seemed to hunch in silence, as though mourning the absence of life. The piano, a centerpiece of many gatherings, sat closed and silent in a corner, its keys untouched and longing for the melody of days gone by. I couldn't resist lifting the cover, half expecting the familiar feel of music at my fingertips, but instead, I found only the cold, still quiet of abandonment. The kitchen, once the heart of our home, held a different aura now. The once vibrant walls seemed to have dimmed, the counters empty and the sink dry. The refrigerator, once plastered with drawings, notes, and photographs, stood bare, its surface clean and unmarked. It felt like stepping into a photograph where the colors had faded, leaving behind only the outlines of a memory. Upstairs, the changes were even more poignant. My old room, a sanctuary of dreams and secrets, felt frozen in time yet strangely altered. The posters on the walls had faded, their edges curling, and the once vibrant colors were now muted, drained of life. My bed, once a haven of comfort and dreams, was neatly made, untouched, as if it had been waiting for my return. But the familiarity of the space clashed with the realization that I was no longer the person who had left it behind. The trinkets and treasures I had once held dear seemed foreign now, relics of a past self that felt increasingly distant. As I ventured into my mother's room, the sensation of unease deepened. Her space was more preserved, a shrine to her existence, but it too held an air of abandonment. Her perfume lingered faintly, a ghost of her presence. The bed was made, her clothes still hung in the closet, and her jewelry lay neatly arranged on the dresser. It was as though she would walk back in at any moment, yet the oppressive silence affirmed the permanence of her absence. With each room I explored, the house revealed layers of our shared history, but also the passage of time that had eroded the familiarity of my childhood home. The changes were more than just physical, they were emotional landmarks, signifying the distance I had put between myself and my past. The nostalgia that accompanied my memories was now tinged with a profound sense of loss, not just for my mother, but for the life we had shared within these walls. Amidst the remnants of my former life, I found myself standing at the threshold of the unknown. The house, with all its changes and unspoken histories, seemed to beckon me forward, urging me to peel back the layers of time and uncover the secrets it guarded. It was a call to journey into the heart of my family's legacy, to face the shadows that lurked in the hidden corners of our past. With each step, the unease I felt was matched by a growing determination. I was here to uncover the truth, no matter where it led. As the days passed, the house seemed to awaken around me, its dormant secret stirring to life with every creak and whisper of the old structure. It began with small, almost dismissible occurrences. A book I was sure I had left on the kitchen table would appear on the living room shelf. Photographs I had looked at before going to bed were found face down in the morning. These misplaced items were easy to rationalize at first, perhaps I had moved them myself and forgotten. But the frequency and oddity of these incidents grew, leaving me with an unsettling feeling that I was not alone in this vast, echoing house. Then there were the noises. At night, when the house should have been drowned in silence, I would hear the subtle but unmistakable sound of footsteps pacing above me, the creak of floorboards in the attic where no one had tread for years. I told myself it was the house settling, the old timbers groaning under their age. Yet, the specificity of the sound, the feeling of being watched, was perhaps the most disconcerting. It would come upon me suddenly, a prickling sensation on the back of my neck, an inexplicable awareness of another presence. This sensation was strongest in the evenings, as shadows grew long and the house filled with dim, uncertain light. I would turn quickly, expecting to catch a glimpse of someone, something, but would be met only with the emptiness of the room. The rational part of my mind fought against the creeping dread, clinging to logical explanations, but the frequency and intensity of these experiences began to erode my skepticism. One evening, while reading in the living room, the unmistakable sound of glass shattering jolted me from my chair. Heart racing, I followed the noise to the kitchen, where I found a vase that had been on the counter, now lay in pieces on the floor. I was certain I had not touched it, nor was there any breeze or environmental cause that could have led to its fall. Standing amidst the shards of glass, the air seemed to hum with an energy, a tension that made my skin crawl. The culmination of these strange occurrences forced me to reconsider my initial skepticism. Was the stress of my return and the grief over my mother's death playing tricks on my mind, or was there something more to these unexplained events? The house, with its long history and whispered secrets, seemed to be pushing back against the intrusion of the present, manifesting its unrest in ways that I could no longer ignore. Despite my unease, or perhaps because of it, my resolve to uncover the truth about my family's past only strengthened. Each misplaced item, each unexplained noise, each eerie sensation of being observed, felt like a piece of a puzzle, urging me to delve deeper into the mysteries of the house. It was as if my mother, in her absence, had left me a trail to follow, one that would lead me to understand not just the secrets of this house, but the shadows that had lingered over our family for generations. One afternoon, driven by a mix of desperation and curiosity to make sense of the unsettling experiences, I ventured into my mother's study, a room I had avoided since my arrival. The air was thick with the scent of old books and a faint trace of her perfume, a combination that transported me back to afternoons spent here as a child, watching her write and ponder in silence. The study felt untouched by time, a shrine to her intellect and solitude. Amidst the organized chaos of her desk, a leather-bound diary caught my eye. It was tucked away in a drawer, almost hidden, as if it was meant to be kept away from prying eyes. My heart raced at the discovery. I had never seen this diary before, and the thought of reading it felt like crossing a line. Yet, the need for answers, for any insight into the strange occurrences in my family's cryptic past, urged me forward. The diary was a window into my mother's inner world, filled with entries that spanned years. Her writing was meticulous, a reflection of her disciplined mind, but as I flipped through the pages, I could sense an undercurrent of sadness and strain. It wasn't until I reached the entries from the last few years that the hints of a dark family secret began to emerge. She wrote of the burden we carry, a phrase that recurred in several entries, each time with a sense of increasing despair. The details were often vague, alluding to mistakes of the past and the cost of silence. Yet, one entry struck me with its clarity and foreboding. I fear the weight of our history will one day be too much to bear. The secrets we've buried, the truths we've denied, they linger in the shadows, haunting our present. How much longer can we keep them at bay? I worry for Annie, for the legacy we leave behind. Will she understand the choices we've made, the price of our silence? This passage sent chills down my spine. The connection between the diary's revelations and the unsettling experiences in the house was undeniable. My mother's words hinted at a legacy of secrets, a darkness that had seeped into the very foundation of our home and family. I pored over the diary, searching for more concrete details, but my mother's entries grew increasingly cryptic. It was as though she was writing for herself, a way to unburden her conscience without fully disclosing the secret she feared. However, her references to a hidden truth, one that seemed to connect our family to the house and its haunting atmosphere, were a threat I couldn't ignore. The discovery of the diary was a turning point. It confirmed my suspicions that the strange occurrences were more than just my imagination or the product of grief. They were manifestations of a deeper, darker truth, one that my mother had grappled with in silence. Armed with her diary, I felt a renewed determination to uncover our family secret. It was no longer just about understanding the disturbances in the house. It was about unraveling the legacy of pain and secrets that my mother had carried, and perhaps, in doing so, finding a way to free both her spirit and mine. The diary, dense with my mother's fears and allusions to a murky past, became my compass in the sprawling mystery of our family home. Its pages, while cryptic, ignited a determination within me to unearth the truths that lay buried beneath layers of silence and secrecy. It was during one of my restless evenings, the diary by my side, that I stumbled upon the entrance to a world my mother had fought to keep hidden. I had decided to re-examine the study, convinced that if there were any physical evidence of the secrets my mother alluded to, it would be among her personal effects. The room, cluttered with books and papers, seemed to whisper secrets of its own. As I moved a heavy bookcase to retrieve a fallen photograph, I noticed an inconsistency in the wall behind it, a faint outline that suggested a doorway long concealed. My heart raced as I cleared the area, revealing a small, ornate keyhole almost camouflaged against the wallpaper. The key, I found moments later, lay hidden at the bottom of my mother's desk drawer, underneath a false bottom I had missed in my initial search. It was as if she had left me a map, each clue leading me closer to the heart of our family's darkness. With a trembling hand, I inserted the key into the lock, and the door swung open with a creak of protest, revealing a narrow passage that led to a hidden room. The air was thick with dust, undisturbed for years, perhaps decades. My flashlight pierced the darkness, revealing a room that seemed frozen in time, filled with old, untouched belongings. The room was a veritable time capsule of our family's past. There were trunks filled with old clothes, their fabrics moth-eaten and faded, boxes of photographs depicting people I had never seen, their faces frozen in sepia tones, and shelves lined with diaries and letters, the handwriting varying from meticulous to hurried scrawls. It was a treasure trove of history, each item a piece of the puzzle my mother had left for me to solve. Among the relics, I found items that seemed incongruous with the rest. Old medical equipment, strange talismans, and journals filled with frantic notes about protection and rituals. It was clear this room served a purpose beyond mere storage. It was a sanctuary, a place of secrets, and, perhaps, desperation. The discovery of the hidden room was a revelation, a physical manifestation of the secrets my mother's diary had hinted at. It held the remnants of a past that my family had sought to keep hidden, a past that now lay before me, begging to be understood. The items within the room told stories of fear, of struggle, and of the darkness that my ancestors had battled, a darkness that, it seemed, had not been entirely vanquished. As I stood among the echoes of my family's hidden history, I felt a weight settle upon my shoulders, the weight of understanding and empathy for the generations that had grappled with this legacy. But with that weight came a resolve to bring the secrets of the hidden room to light, to confront the shadows that had lingered too long in the corners of our family's past. This room, concealed by walls and silence, was the key to unraveling the mystery that had enveloped my family, and it was my burden and privilege to explore its depths. The hidden room, a repository of my family's unspoken legacy, felt like a vault that had finally yielded to the pressure of its own secrets. Surrounded by the relics of the past, I was drawn to a collection of letters and photographs that seemed to pulsate with a life of their own, as if aware of their impending revelation. These were not mere mementos, they were testimonies of a sinister chapter in my family's history, patiently awaiting discovery. The letters, yellowed with age, were tied together with a ribbon that crumbled at my touch. They were correspondences between my ancestors and individuals whose names whispered of old ties and darker affiliations. The content ranged from mundane family matters to cryptic discussions about the burden my mother had alluded to in her diary. As I delved deeper, the letters became more desperate, hinting at a malevolent. The photographs, too, told a story of their own. Among the typical family portraits, there were several that stood out. Images of gatherings that looked more like rituals, stern-faced individuals standing around symbols I didn't recognize, and one haunting photograph of the house, with what appeared to be figures standing in the windows, despite the picture being labeled as taken during a period when the house was supposedly empty. As I pieced together the letters and photographs, a chilling narrative emerged. My family, for reasons unknown, had been entangled with dark practices, perhaps in an attempt to protect themselves from the very curse my great-grandfather had mentioned. The burden was not just a metaphor for family secrets, it was a literal darkness that had been carried through generations, a pact of curse that bound my ancestors to the house and to the malevolent forces they sought to control or appease. The discovery was overwhelming. The history I had been so eager to uncover was darker and more complex than I could have imagined. My family, known in the community for their philanthropy and respectability, harbored a hidden lineage of fear, desperation, and possibly, complicity in deeds that went beyond the bounds of the ordinary. Sitting among the detritus of my family's secret past, I felt a mix of horror and fascination. The sinister aspects of my heritage, while terrifying, also provided a context for the strange occurrences I had experienced in the house. It seemed that the disturbances were not merely echoes of the past, but manifestations of a deep-rooted darkness that had never been fully confronted or resolved. The weight of this revelation was not just in the secrets themselves, but in the realization that my mother had lived with this knowledge, battling the shadows alone in her final years. It was a legacy of burden and silence, one that I had inadvertently inherited. Yet, with this knowledge came a sense of clarity and purpose. I was determined to unravel the full extent of my family's dark past, to confront the shadows head-on, and to seek a resolution that had eluded my ancestors. The journey into my family's hidden history was far from over, but I was resolved to bring light to the darkness that had lingered in our lives for far too long. Armed with the letters, photographs, and a growing sense of determination, I set out to unravel the mysteries that clung to the walls of my family home like cobwebs. Each piece of information, each name whispered from the past, became a thread in a complex tapestry of history and secrecy. My focus turned to the photographs, those silent witnesses of time, and particularly to the faces that had been captured in moments of solemnity and, perhaps, fear. Among the various portraits, one figure appeared repeatedly, always positioned slightly apart from the others, as if marking his difference or estrangement. His gaze, unlike the rest, didn't project towards the camera, but seemed lost, introspective, hinting at a mind burdened with secrets or knowledge too heavy to bear. His presence in these photographs was a puzzle, his identity a blank space in the narrative I was painstakingly piecing together. Using the family records stored in the study, I began to match names to faces, tracing lineages and noting connections. It was during this meticulous process that I discovered in Jonathan, a relative on my mother's side, whose life had taken a dark turn. According to the records, Jonathan was a man of keen intellect and curious disposition, traits that, while admirable, had led him down paths less trodden and, ultimately, to his ostracization. Jonathan's story unfolded through a series of journal entries, letters, and whispered tales in the margins of family lore. He had been a prominent figure in the family until his interests in the esoteric and the occult drove a wedge between him and the rest of our lineage. His pursuits, deemed dangerous and unholy, had caused much distress among family members, leading to his eventual disappearance from the family narrative. The last entry relating to Jonathan spoke of his abrupt departure from the house, a departure shrouded in mystery and speculation, with some suggesting he had either been forced to leave or had chosen exile over confrontation. The connection between Jonathan and the sinister aspects revealed in the hidden room and my mother's diary became increasingly clear. The rituals, the symbols, and the dark practices alluded to in the letters suggested that Jonathan had not merely dabbled in the occult, but had delved deeply, perhaps too deeply, into its secrets. His ostracization and subsequent disappearance seemed to coincide with the onset of the curse my family so feared. Driven by a mix of empathy and curiosity, I sought to learn more about Jonathan's fate after leaving the family home. The local library and historical society provided snippets of information, sightings, and rumors of a man who lived on the fringes, a shadow of his former self, consumed by his quest for knowledge or redemption. His trail, however, vanished as suddenly as he had from our family's life, leaving behind a legacy of questions and a palpable sense of loss. Jonathan's story, pieced together from fragments of family records and local lore, painted a picture of a man who, whether through choice or circumstance, bore the brunt of the family's fears and prejudices. His disappearance was not just a physical absence, but a void in the family's history, a chapter that had been deliberately obscured, perhaps out of shame or fear. As I delved deeper into the house's history and Jonathan's identity, I realized that understanding his fate was key to unraveling the mysteries that plagued my family. His life and disappearance were intricately linked to the darkness that shadowed our lineage, a darkness that, I suspected, had roots deeper and more tangled. Than I had initially thought. The quest to uncover the truth about Jonathan and the nature of the family curse became not just a journey into the past, but a personal mission to restore his name and, in doing so, confront the shadows that had haunted us for generations. The pieces of the puzzle lay scattered before me, each element a diary filled with veiled references to a family burden, a hidden room cluttered with relics of dark practices, and the tragic tale of Jonathan seemingly disparate yet undeniably linked by the shadow that loomed over our family's history. As I delved deeper, connecting these dots became an obsession, a quest not just for understanding, but for liberation from the chains of secrecy that bound us. The diary, my mother's silent testament to the fears and burdens she carried, was the emotional compass that guided my journey. Her words, though cryptic, resonated with a profound sense of urgency and despair, hinting at a legacy much darker and more complex than I had ever imagined. It was clear that the burden she referred to was not merely a metaphorical darkness, but a tangible curse that had inflicted our family across generations. The hidden room, with its collection of occult artifacts, letters, and photographs, served as the physical evidence of this legacy. The items within each with its own story, its own piece of the puzzle were relics of a family's desperate attempts to confront, understand, or perhaps even harness the darkness that had ensnared us. The presence of Jonathan in many of these photographs, often depicted with symbols and artifacts related to the occult, solidified his role in the narrative. His obsession with the esoteric had clearly played a pivotal role in the unfolding of the family curse. Local historical records provided the context needed to ground these discoveries in reality. Jonathan's ostracization from the family and his subsequent disappearance were not just family lore, but events that had left ripples in the local community. Newspaper clippings, property records, and personal accounts from the time painted a picture of a man who, driven by a quest for knowledge or power, had crossed boundaries that led to his downfall. His absence from the family, coupled with the emergence of strange occurrences and tragedies within the household, suggested a direct correlation between his actions and the family's misfortunes. Connecting these dots, the outline of a harrowing story emerged: one of a family entangled in a web of dark practices, a binding curse, and a lineage marked by fear and tragedy. The diary, the hidden room, and the historical records were not just isolated fragments, but chapters of a larger narrative that traced the origins of our family's curse back to Jonathan's experiments with the occult. This realization was both enlightening and chilling. It implied that the disturbances I had experienced in the house were not mere echoes of the past, but manifestations of a curse that remained active, a malevolent force that had clung to the family through the decades. Jonathan's role as the catalyst was undeniable. His pursuit of forbidden knowledge had opened a door that, it seemed, could not be easily closed. Armed with this understanding, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Unraveling the mystery of the family curse was no longer just an attempt to satisfy personal curiosity. It was a mission to confront and, if possible, undo the darkness that Jonathan had unleashed. The task was daunting, but the connections I had drawn between the diary, the hidden room, and the local historical records provided a roadmap for this journey. I was determined to follow it to the end, to uncover the full extent of the curse and find a way to liberate my family from its grasp. The shadows that had enveloped our lineage for so long were beginning to lift, revealing a path forward that, though fraught with challenges, offered a glimmer of hope for redemption and peace. As I pieced together the narrative that had been obscured by years of silence and evasion, the nature of the dark family secret that had cast such a long shadow over us began to crystallize. The journey through my mother's diary, the hidden room, and the trove of local historical records had led me to a chilling revelation. Jonathan, the relative whose life had spiraled into the depths of the occult, the truth emerged in fragments, each more disturbing than the last. Jonathan's involvement in the occult had started as a pursuit of knowledge, but the letters and diary entries hinted at a turn towards darker practices. It wasn't just the pursuit of the esoteric that had led to his ostracization, but his engagement in activities that crossed the line into criminality. The local historical records, when viewed through this new lens, revealed a series of unexplained incidents and tragedies that had occurred during Jonathan's most active years, events that had been whispered about in hushed tones, but never directly linked to our family until now. Property records showed sudden transfers of ownership under mysterious circumstances, while newspaper clippings alluded to disappearances and unexplained accidents in the area. Cross-referencing these events with Jonathan's known whereabouts at the time painted a grim picture of a man who, consumed by his quest for power, had resorted to criminal acts to further his ambitions. The implications were horrifying, suggesting sacrifices made in the name of forbidden rituals and pacts with forces beyond the realm of understanding. The family, it seemed, had been complicit in a silence born of a mixture of shame, fear, and perhaps a misguided hope that the curse, both literal and metaphorical, that Jonathan had brought upon us could be contained. My mother's diary entries, once cryptic, now read as a lamentation of this legacy, a burden of knowledge that she had borne alone, too weighed down by the fear of judgment and the hopelessness of redemption. The revelation of Jonathan's involvement in criminal activities and the dark practices that accompanied them was a turning point. It was not just the acts themselves, but the realization that our family, in their silence and inaction, had allowed the darkness to fester, a shadow that had grown only more potent with each passing generation. The disturbances in the house, the sense of being watched, the whispers from the shadows, all were manifestations of a curse that was both supernatural and self-inflicted, a consequence of actions too horrific to face and too significant to escape. Confronting this truth was like standing at the edge of an abyss, staring into the depths of my family's soul. The shame and fear that had enveloped us were now mine to bear, but with this burden came a clarity of purpose. Understanding the full extent of Jonathan's descent and the darkness it had invited into our lives was the key to unraveling the curse that bound us. The path forward was fraught with uncertainty and danger, but armed with the truth, I felt a resolve to confront the legacy Jonathan had left us. It was a journey that would require delving deeper into the occult than I had ever imagined, seeking answers in the shadows he had embraced. But beyond the darkness, I hoped to find a light, a chance for redemption, and a way to lift the curse that had plagued our family for generations. The secret that had once threatened to destroy us was now the beacon guiding me towards hope. The pieces of the puzzle, once scattered and obscured by the shadows of time, began to align, revealing a picture far more complex and disturbing than I had anticipated. Jonathan's descent into darkness, marked by his involvement in criminal activities and forbidden rituals, had not only cast a long shadow over our family, but it also imbued the very walls of our ancestral home with a legacy of fear and unrest. The realization that the disturbances I had experienced in the house, the misplaced items, the unexplained noises, the eerie sensation of being watched were not merely coincidental or the product of an overactive imagination, but deeply connected to this unresolved history, was both enlightening and terrifying. The hidden room, with its collection of occult artifacts and symbols, was a testament to the depth of Jonathan's involvement in the dark arts, a physical manifestation of the secret practices that had once been confined to whispers and veiled references in my mother's diary. The letters and photographs I had discovered, detailing both mundane family matters and cryptic discussions of the burden, served as a bridge between the past and the present, illustrating how the actions of one individual had rippled through generations, leaving a mark that time could not erase. It became clear that the disturbances in the house were expressions of the unresolved turmoil that had plagued our family for generations. The items moving on their own, the sounds of footsteps in empty rooms, the shattering glass all, were manifestations of the house's attempt to communicate its pain, to bring to light the secrets that had been buried within its walls. The home, steeped in a history of darkness and silence, was not merely a passive container of memories, but an active participant in the legacy of the curse that Jonathan had unleashed. The more I reflected on the connection between the disturbances and our family's history, the more I understood that these were not random acts of haunting but desperate cries for resolution. The house, like a wounded creature, was echoing the fear, shame, and guilt that my ancestors had tried to hide, a living reminder of the cost of their silence and inaction. This realization shifted my perspective, transforming the house from a place of fear to a ground zero for confrontation and, hopefully, healing. My family's attempts to hide our dark past, to bury the truth beneath layers of silence, had only served to feed the curse, to give it strength. The disturbances were a manifestation of this truth, a call to action that could no longer be ignored. I now saw my experiences not as mere encounters with the paranormal, but as pieces of a larger narrative that demanded acknowledgement and resolution. Armed with this new understanding, I felt a renewed sense of determination to confront the legacy that Jonathan had left behind. It was no longer enough to merely uncover the secrets of the past. I was compelled to find a way to resolve them, to heal the wounds that had been inflicted upon our family and the house itself. The path forward was fraught with uncertainty, but the connection between the disturbances and our family's unresolved history had illuminated a way forward, a chance to break the cycle of fear and silence that had held us captive for too long. The journey ahead would require courage, a willingness to delve into the darkest corners of our family's past, and a resolve to face whatever truths lay hidden there. But I was no longer alone in this endeavor. The house, with all its whispers and shadows, was my ally, guiding me towards a confrontation with the past and, ultimately, towards a chance for redemption and peace. The disturbances that had once terrified me were now beacons, guiding me through the darkness towards the light of understanding and resolution. As I delved deeper into the heart of my family's dark legacy, the boundary between the tangible world and the unseen forces at play within the walls of our ancestral home began to blur. The encounters that once seemed merely unsettling now took on a more profound, disturbing nature, challenging not only my grasp on reality, but also compelling me to confront the metaphorical demons that had haunted our lineage for generations. One evening, as twilight cast its somber shadows through the house, I stood in the study, poring over the remnants of Jonathan's life and legacy. The room, saturated with the essence of countless untold stories, seemed to pulse with an energy that was both invigorating and unnerving. It was there, amidst the silence punctuated only by the creaks and groans of the old house, that I experienced an encounter that would forever alter my perception of our family's curse. As I reached for an old journal, a sudden chill enveloped the room, the temperature dropping so rapidly that my breath became visible in the air. The journal, once resting inertly in my hands, began to tremble, its pages fluttering open to an entry marked by a hastily drawn symbol that mirrored those found in the hidden room. The words on the page, penned in a frantic hand, spoke of a ritual gone awry, of doors opened that could not be closed. As I read, the air around me thickened, and the faint sound of whispers filled the room, voices that seemed to emanate from the very walls, pleading, warning, condemning. The encounter was disorienting, a visceral manifestation of the house's hidden truths. It was as if the journal had served as a key, unlocking a door to the past that allowed the energies and emotions of those long-gone events to flood into the present. The whispers, though indistinct, carried with them the weight of centuries of sorrow and regret, a palpable reminder of the price of delving into the unknown. In the days that followed, these encounters grew more frequent and intense. Mirrors would fog without the presence of steam, revealing messages scrawled in handwriting that mirrored my ancestors. Photographs would fall from their places on the walls, their frames intact, but the images inside altered, showing scenes of rituals and gatherings that chilled me to the bone. At night, I would wake to the sensation of being watched, only to find shadows lurking in the corners of my room, shifting unsettlingly in the moonlight. Each encounter served as a confrontation with the family's past, a past that refused to remain buried. The metaphorical demons of our lineage secrets, guilt, fear were manifesting in ways that were both terrifying and enlightening. It was as if the house, and perhaps the spirits of those who had once inhabited it, were guiding me, pushing me to acknowledge and confront the darkness that had been passed down through generations. These experiences, though they tested the limits of my sanity, also steeled my resolve. I understood now that the path to resolution, to lifting the curse that had plagued our family, lay not in turning away from these encounters, but in facing them head-on. The shadows that danced in the corners of my vision, the whispers that filled the silence, were not just hauntings but messages, pieces of a puzzle that I was destined to solve. Confronting the metaphorical demons of our family's past became my crucible, a journey through darkness in search of light. With each encounter, I felt myself drawn closer to the heart of the mystery, to the source of the curse that had bound us. It was a path fraught with danger and despair, but also one that held the promise of redemption not just for myself, but for all those who had been ensnared by the family's dark legacy. A journey through my family's shadowed past, guided by the unsettling encounters that had become almost commonplace within the walls of our ancestral home, culminated in a moment I could never have anticipated, a symbolic confrontation that would take place in the very heart of the darkness, the hidden room. Driven by a resolve forged from countless revelations and challenges to my understanding of reality, I found myself standing before the concealed door to the hidden room once again. This time, however, it was not curiosity that propelled me forward, but a deep-seated need for resolution, for peace. The air felt charged, heavy with anticipation, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. As I entered the hidden room, the door swung shut behind me with an ominous thud, plunging me into darkness. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and wax, and my heart raced as I fumbled for the light. When the dim glow of my flashlight finally pierced the darkness, it revealed the room in all its macabre glory, the artifacts, the photographs, the symbols that spoke of a family entwined with forces beyond their control. Standing there, surrounded by the tangible remnants of my family's darkest hours, I felt the weight of generations bearing down on me. The guilt, the fear, the unresolved tension that had permeated our lives were all present, suffocating in their intensity. It was in this moment, this confrontation with the physical and metaphorical demons of our past, that I felt a shift within myself. I began to speak, my voice steady at first but growing in confidence. I addressed the spirits of my ancestors, Jonathan's tortured soul, and the dark forces that had been unleashed by his actions. I acknowledged the pain, the sacrifices, and the burden of silence that had cursed our family. My words filled the room, a litany of acknowledgement, forgiveness, and plea for release. As I spoke, the atmosphere in the room began to change. The oppressive weight lifted, giving way to a sense of calm, as if the house itself was listening, absorbing my words, and releasing the pent-up energy of centuries. The photographs on the walls, once harbingers of darkness, seemed to fade into mere paper and ink, their power diminished. The artifacts, symbols of our entanglement with the occult, appeared less menacing, more like relics of a bygone era. The climax of this confrontation came not with a clash of forces, but with a profound silence, a silence that enveloped the room and my very being, offering a sense of closure, of reconciliation. In facing my fears and the guilt that had haunted our home, I had not banished the darkness but acknowledged it, weaving it into the fabric of our family's narrative in a way that allowed for healing and acceptance. As I emerged from the hidden room, the door closing behind me with a soft click, I knew that something fundamental had shifted. The house, once a prison of our darkest secrets, now felt lighter, as if it too had been freed from the burdens of the past. The journey through the shadows had brought me to a place of understanding and peace, a realization that the path to redemption lay not in the erasure of our past, but in the acceptance and transformation of it. The symbolic confrontation in the hidden room had not only allowed me to face my fears, but it also offered a chance for our family to move beyond the guilt and silence that had defined us. It was a step towards breaking the cycle, towards healing, a chance to rebuild on foundations of truth and reconciliation. The shadows of the past would always be a part of our story, but now, they would no longer define us. After the cathartic confrontation in the hidden room, a profound shift occurred within me. The symbolic release of the dark forces and secrets that had plagued our family for generations sparked a newfound determination to not only confront, but also reconcile with our past. It was a resolve that led me to a decision that, under the shadow of our long-held secrets, would have seemed unthinkable. To bring the truth about our family's history to light, thereby cleansing our name of its hidden shame. The journey to this point had been one of unveiling shadows and confronting truths so long buried that they had become almost myth. Yet, armed with the knowledge and understanding gleaned from my mother's diary, the hidden room's artifacts, and the countless encounters that had challenged my grasp on reality, I felt an obligation not just to my ancestors, but to future generations. The cycle of fear, secrecy, and guilt had to be broken, and the truth, no matter how dark or painful, was the only tool powerful enough to shatter those chains. My decision was met with resistance. Family members, few as we were, cautioned against the repercussions, fearing the judgment of the wider community and the potential to unearth more than we were prepared to handle. Their concerns were not unfounded. The prospect of bringing our family's darkest moments into the light was daunting. Yet, the weight of the silence we had maintained felt far heavier than any consequence of truth. I began by documenting everything I had discovered, from Jonathan's descent into the occult and his subsequent actions that had brought such turmoil upon us, to the rituals and practices that had become a hidden lineage within our family tree. Each piece of evidence, each artifact and document, was carefully catalogued and included in a comprehensive account that sought not to sensationalize, but to understand and contextualize our family's past. With the help of a local historian and a willingness to face whatever came, I organized a series of presentations for the community, starting with a small gathering at the local library. The initial reception was one of skepticism, a mirror to my own disbelief when I had first begun to unravel the threads of our family's legacy. Yet, as I shared our story, laying bare the truths that had once seemed insurmountable, I noticed a shift in perception. The narrative of shame and fear was slowly replaced by one of empathy and a shared desire to understand the complexities of history and the human condition. The process of bringing the truth to light was not immediate nor entirely free of consequence. Yet, with each telling, with each acknowledgement of our past, I felt the grip of the hidden shame loosen. The family name, once whispered with a mixture of fear and curiosity, began to evoke discussions about the importance of facing our darkest truths, about the power of honesty and reconciliation. Through this journey of revelation, I not only sought to cleanse our family name of its hidden shame, but also to offer a beacon of hope for others entangled in their histories of darkness. The truth, I had learned, was a powerful catalyst for change, capable of breaking the cycles that bind us to the past. In choosing to confront and share our family's story, I had not erased the shadows that had defined us, but had instead illuminated them, transforming a legacy of fear into one of courage and redemption. Annie's decision to reveal the truth about her family's past marked a turning point, not only in her personal journey, but also in the narrative of her lineage. By choosing transparency and understanding over secrecy and shame, she offered a path forward, a way to acknowledge the past, while forging a future unburdened by its weight. It was a testament to the belief that, even in the darkest of histories, there is the potential for healing, growth, and, ultimately, peace. As I stand on the threshold of what was once the epicenter of our family's dark legacy, I am struck by the profound transformation that has taken place not just within the walls of this ancient house, but within myself. The journey through our hidden past, a path fraught with shadows and revelations, has led me to a place of unexpected peace and understanding. The decision to bring our family's secrets to light, to confront the fears and guilt that had shrouded our name, has been both a burden and a liberation. The house, which once seemed to loom over us with an air of malevolence, now stands as a testament to our journey of reconciliation. The whispers and shadows that once filled its rooms have quieted, replaced by a sense of calm that speaks of resolved turmoil and accepted truths. It's as if the very foundations have been cleansed by our efforts to confront the past, allowing the house to breathe once again, free from the weight of unspoken secrets. Looking back, I realized that the disturbances that once terrified me were indeed messages, desperate attempts by the house, and perhaps by the spirits of those who once dwelled within its walls, to be understood, to be released from the cycle of silence and fear that had bound us all. In heeding these calls, and choosing to face the darkness head-on, I've learned that the power of our family's curse was not in its ability to instill fear, but in our willingness to remain silent, to let the shadows grow unchecked. The community's response to our revelations has been more supportive than I could have hoped for. What was once whispered about in hushed tones of fear and suspicion has given way to open discussions about history, forgiveness, and the complexities of human nature. Our family name, once a symbol of hidden shame, is now associated with the courage to confront the past and the strength to move forward. As for me, the journey through our family's history has been a profound personal awakening. I've come to understand that the darkness we faced was not just a legacy of fear and guilt, but a call to break free from the chains of the past. In doing so, I found a sense of purpose and a peace that I once thought impossible. The shadows that once haunted me now serve as reminders of our capacity for change, for redemption, and for hope. The house, now a place of calm and reflection, stands ready to welcome a new generation, one that will grow up free from the burdens of our past, knowledgeable of their history, but unencumbered by its weight. As I prepare to pass on the stewardship of this home, I do so with the knowledge that the darkness has been acknowledged, the secrets have been unveiled, and the path forward is lit by the light of truth. In the end, the legacy of our family will not be defined by the secrets we kept, but by the courage to face them, to bring them into the light. It's a testament to the belief that, no matter how deep the shadows, there is always a path to the dawn. As I close this chapter of our family's story, I look to the future with hope, knowing that the true power lies not in the darkness that once defined us, but in the light we've chosen to embrace. This is not the end but a new beginning, a chance to forge a legacy built not on fear and silence, but on understanding, forgiveness, and renewal. As the sun rises over the horizon, casting its light on the house that has seen so much, I am reminded that even after the darkest night, there is always the promise of a new dawn.